Hey, what's up, everyone? Nick Underhill for NewOrleans.Football, and you are watching The Dot, presented by Matt Bowers Auto Group. It's Friday, so that means it's time for our weekly mailbag, and as always, we are taking questions from our private Twitter community. If you are a subscriber to NewOrleans.Football, hit the threaded tweet below this one, click the link. That'll take you to the page where you can request an invite to the community, and you can ask questions, chop it up with other Saints fans, and interact with us in there. This week, we are starting with a question from Just Chris, who asks, do you think the Saints will do any early extensions this year? I think obviously there are two candidates, and Chris mentioned them both. Eric McCoy and Marcus Davenport both could be good options to get new contracts. I've heard a little bit more on the McCoy front, but I think it makes sense to get both of those deals done. McCoy has obviously been a huge part of this offensive line the last few years, and keeping him around would make a lot of sense. And also, Davenport is probably one of the more talented defensive players on this team. Keeping him part of that defense, I think, would make a lot of sense, and getting the deal done now instead of later would have a lot of merit. He is extremely talented, but the injuries have been an issue. So if the Saints give him a little bit of security early and he trades in a little bit of value now by not going to the open market, it could be a win-win for both sides to find a deal that's a little bit lower than he would get in free agency, but it would allow him to have that security of that deal now. Our next question comes from Sydney Saint, who asks, how does Roby fit with the defense if he's the one to take the slot role? What changes and what stays the same? The cleanest way to do this would be to put just Roby in the slot, because then everything else around him stays the same. The corners stay the same, the safeties stay the same, and Roby just kind of fills in the slot. Wouldn't be quite maybe as dynamic overall with some of the run defense, the blitzing and all that, but he could cover and everything else remains the same. I don't think it's actually going to go that way, though. I think the Saints are going to be more game plan specific week to week. When it makes sense to have Roby there, he'll be there. When it makes sense to have Justin Evans there or somebody else, PJ Williams, those guys will be there. So I think it's going to be something that adds to the disguise a little bit and to the uncertainty of what this defense is going to do, because teams won't be able to pigeonhole who's going to be there every week. But I would be surprised at the end of the season if Roby isn't the leader in snaps. And our last question comes from Just Joseph, who asks, what is Michael Thomas's timeline? I'm not going to throw down an exact timeline because so many things can happen, but I would say that I think he's going to be back fairly soon. He's walking well. He's moving around well. People around him say that he's doing well, and there's really nothing to be worried about. So I think Michael Thomas will be back sooner than later from that hamstring injury. And if we're being honest, as the season looms, that is the number one storyline for me to see how he plays this year. I don't think anything will be more interesting, and this is a very fascinating team with a lot of subplots, but the return of Michael Thomas looms over everything. That does it for The Dot this week. For everything else, keep it locked to NewOrleans.Football.